A poor village boy became prime minister and millionaire at the same time by selling passports to rich foreigners. But now the whole world is asking if he broke the rules to get rich. Gaston Browne is one of the most talked about leaders in the Caribbean today. A man who went from having almost nothing as a child to becoming both the Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda and a very wealthy businessman worth about $12 million. Born on February 9, 1967, in a small village called Potters in Antigua, Gaston grew up in a poor family that struggled to pay bills and put food on the table. His parents worked hard, but money was always tight, and young Gaston saw firsthand how difficult life could be for ordinary people in Antigua. The country had just become independent from Britain in 1981, and jobs were hard to find. Many families lived in small houses without much furniture or modern conveniences that people in richer countries took for granted. But Gaston was a smart kid who paid attention in school and understood that getting a good education was the only way to escape poverty. He studied hard and did well in his classes, especially in subjects like math and business. After finishing high school in Antigua, he got the chance to go to university in England at the University of Manchester, where he studied banking and finance. This was a huge opportunity because most Antiguans could never afford to study abroad. Learning about money, banks, and investments in England gave Gaston knowledge that very few people back home had, and he planned to use this knowledge to make a better life for himself. When Gaston came back to Antigua in the early 90s, he got a job working in banking and finance. He was good at his job and started making connections with rich people and business owners across the Caribbean. During this time, he learned about a new business that small Caribbean countries were starting. They would sell citizenship and passports to rich foreigners who wanted a second passport. Countries like Street Kids and Nevis started doing this first. Rich people from places like China, Russia, and Middle Eastern countries wanted Caribbean passports because these passports let them travel to many countries without needing visas. For someone from a country with a weak passport, getting a Caribbean passport meant freedom to travel to Europe, Britain, and many other places easily. Gaston saw that there was serious money to be made in this passport business. He started working as a middleman, connecting rich foreigners who wanted to buy citizenship with the Caribbean government selling it. Every time he helped someone get a passport, he earned a commission, which is a percentage of the money paid. Since these citizenship programs cost anywhere from $100,000 to several million dollars depending on the country and type of investment, the commissions were huge. Gaston began making much more money than he ever could have earned from a regular banking job. He was meeting millionaires and billionaires from all over the world and helping them get Caribbean passports while getting rich himself in the process. While building his passport business, Gaston also got interested in politics. He joined the Antigua and Barbuda Labour Party, which is one of the two main political parties in the country. He got elected to Parliament in 2004, representing an area of the capital city. Right from the start, people noticed that Gaston was different from most Caribbean politicians. He was aggressive and loud, not afraid to insult his opponents or get into heated arguments. He knew a lot about economics and business, which most politicians did not, and he could talk for hours about development plans and investment strategies. Some people loved his energy and confidence, while others thought he was too rude and confrontational. Gaston moved up quickly in the Labour Party because he was smart, hardworking, and good at raising money for the party. By 2012, he became the leader of the party, which meant he would become prime minister if the Labour Party won the next election. He promised voters that he would fix the economy, create jobs, and bring more money into the country. In June 2014, his party won the election and Gaston Browne became Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda at age 47. This was an amazing achievement for someone who grew up poor, but it was also when the really controversial part of his story began. As Prime Minister, Gaston had the power to make decisions about how the country was run, including the Citizenship by Investment program that he knew so well from his business career. He immediately expanded this program, making it one of the biggest sources of money for the government. Under the program, rich foreigners could get Antigua citizenship and a passport by either donating at least $100,000 to a government fund or by investing in real estate or businesses in Antigua. The Antiguan passport allows visa-free travel to over 150 countries including Britain and most of Europe, making it very valuable to wealthy people from countries with weaker passports. The program brought in millions of dollars every year, and Gaston said this money was used to build roads, schools, hospitals, and other things the country needed. Many Antiguans benefited from these improvements and were grateful that Gaston was bringing in money and creating jobs. However, critics started asking uncomfortable questions about where some of this money was really going. Investigative reporters discovered that companies owned by Gaston and his family members were working as official agents for the Citizenship program. This meant they were earning big commissions every time someone bought citizenship through them. In other words, Gaston was making personal profit from a government program that he controlled as prime minister. This created what is called a conflict of interest, which means someone is in a position where their personal financial interests clash with their public duties. As prime minister, Gaston should be making decisions about the citizenship program based on what is best for the country. But if he and his family are personally making money from the program, how can anyone be sure his decisions are not influenced? By wanting to increase his own profits, critics say this is corruption, that Gaston is using his government position to make himself and his family rich. Supporters argue that he earned his money through legitimate business activities and that the citizenship program helps the whole country, not just him. The controversy gets worse when you look at how much money Gaston has made while being prime minister. His net worth is estimated at around $12 million as of 2025. His official salary as prime minister is not nearly enough to accumulate that kind of wealth. While he did have business activities before becoming prime minister, most of his wealth seems to have grown during his time in office, when his companies were heavily involved in the citizenship business. His wife Maria and other family members also work in businesses connected to passport sales, making it look like the whole family is profiting from government programs. Gaston and Maria have children together, though they try to keep their kids out of the media spotlight as much as possible. Maria works in financial services and various business ventures, often alongside her husband. She occasionally appears with Gaston at official government events, but mostly stays away from the political fights and controversies that constantly surround him. The Browne family lives in a beautiful big house in Antigua and enjoys a luxury lifestyle with expensive cars, designer clothes, and international travel. Gaston's social media sometimes shows him at fancy restaurants and high-end resorts, living a life that most Antiguans struggling to pay rent and buy groceries can only dream about. This visible wealth creates anger among ordinary citizens who wonder why their prime minister lives like a millionaire while many people cannot find good jobs or afford basic needs. When people see their leader driving around in luxury vehicles and wearing expensive watches, it is hard not to feel that something unfair is happening. Gaston's supporters say he worked hard for his success and should not be criticized for being wealthy. His critics say it is wrong for a public servant to get so rich while in office, especially through businesses connected to government programs. Beyond the personal enrichment questions, there are serious problems with citizenship by investment programs in general. International investigators have found cases where criminals, people wanted by police, and corrupt officials from other countries managed to buy Caribbean passports. These programs are supposed to do background checks to make sure bad people do not get passports, but the checks are often not thorough enough. Money laundering is a big concern, meaning that criminals use these programs to make their dirty money look clean. There are also worries that terrorists or other dangerous people could exploit these programs to get legitimate travel documents that would let them move around the world more easily. The European Union and United States have repeatedly criticized Caribbean citizenship programs and pressured countries like Antigua to strengthen their security checks. The fear is that by selling passports to anyone with enough money, small Caribbean nations are creating security risks for the whole world. One really embarrassing case for Gaston involved a man named Mehul Choksi from India. Choksi was accused of stealing nearly $2 billion from Indian banks through fraud. In 2017, he bought Antigua citizenship through the investment program and moved to Antigua. The Indian government wanted him arrested and sent back to India to face charges, but Gaston's government protected him and used legal tricks to keep him in Antigua for years. This case made international news and proved exactly what critics had warned about with these passport programs. Gaston's response to all criticism is aggressive and unapologetic. He does not back down or admit mistakes. Instead, he attacks his critics, calling them jealous, racist, or agents of foreign governments trying to control Antigua. When journalists write negative stories about him, he threatens to sue them. He has used government advertising money as a weapon, punishing newspapers that criticize him by taking away government ads while rewarding friendly media with contracts. These tactics have led to accusations that he is acting like a dictator and damaging democracy in Antigua. Press freedom groups have expressed concern about the intimidation of journalists and media outlets that challenge Gaston. Despite all the controversies and criticism, Gaston keeps winning elections. He won again in 2018 and again in 2023, showing that enough Antiguans support him to keep him in power. His supporters appreciate the roads, airport improvements, and other infrastructure projects completed under his leadership. They like that he stands up to bigger countries and does not apologize for Antigua's policies even when the European Union or United States complain. For people who remember colonialism, there's something satisfying about seeing an Antiguan leader tell powerful white countries to mind their own business. Gaston presents himself as defending small nations' right to run their own affairs without interference from former colonial powers. His supporters also point to economic improvements under his leadership. Tourism has grown, with new hotels opening and more visitors coming to Antigua. The Citizenship program money has funded projects that previous governments could not afford. Unemployment has gone down from its worst levels. These are real accomplishments that have made life better for some Antiguans. The question is whether these benefits are worth the ethical problems, corruption concerns, and international reputation damage that come with Gaston's methods. One big worry is that Antigua has become too dependent on selling passports. If the European Union decides that Antiguan passport holders can no longer travel visa-free to Europe, the citizenship program would basically collapse overnight because its main selling point would disappear. This would be a disaster for Antigua's government budget, which now relies heavily on citizenship money. Critics say Gaston should be building other industries and creating a more diverse economy instead of putting all the country's eggs in one basket. What happens when the passport business ends? Gaston has also borrowed a lot of money from other countries, especially China. Chinese loans have paid for new roads and airport improvements, but this debt has to be paid back eventually. Some people worry that Antigua is borrowing too much and will not be able to pay it back, which could give China too much control over the country. Gaston dismisses these worries and says Antigua needs to work with whoever is willing to help. Not just traditional partners like Britain and America who often promise assistance but do not deliver. Looking at Gaston's political style, he is very different from the calm, diplomatic approach most Caribbean leaders use. He is loud, confrontational, and always ready for a fight. He uses harsh language against opponents and does not worry about offending people. On his radio show, which he hosts regularly, he attacks critics by name and defends his government's actions in long, detailed monologues. Some people find this refreshing and authentic, appreciating that he speaks his mind rather than using careful political language. Others think it is unprofessional and beneath the dignity of a prime minister. His relationship with the opposition parties and independent media is terrible. He treats them as enemies rather than legitimate voices in a democracy. He questions their motives, accuses them of being paid by foreign interests, and works to undermine their credibility. This has created a very polarized political environment in Antigua where people either strongly support Gaston or strongly oppose him, with little middle ground. This polarization is not healthy for democracy because it makes compromise and cooperation almost impossible. Looking at everything together, Gaston Browne's story shows both the possibilities and the problems of modern Caribbean politics. He proves that someone from a poor background can rise to the top through intelligence, hard work, and determination. He has brought energy and aggressive development focus to government. He has secured funding for infrastructure projects. He has defended Antigua's interests even against powerful countries. These achievements are real and matter to people whose lives have improved, but the ethical questions will not go away. How did a prime minister accumulate $12 million while in office? Why are his family businesses profiting from government programs he controls? Why did criminals and fraud suspects manage to buy Antiguan passports? Why does he attack journalists and intimidate critics? Why is the economy so dependent on one controversial program? These questions deserve answers, and the answers given so far have not been satisfying to many people both inside and outside Antigua. Subscribe now to discover more amazing stories of Caribbean leaders whose rise to power and wealth changed their countries forever in ways both good and bad.